I am Greeny. I'm in Bristol, Connecticut again this morning. And as I have said and will say as long as we need to say it, we're going to get through this thing together as sports fans. If we got a ton of news, let's start with that. Let's get up and go where the NCAA, will allow Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence and his girlfriend to proceed with fundraising efforts for coronavirus victims. When Clemson officials learned about the page they'd put together, they initially asked them to deactivate it based on NCAA policy. But the NCAA issued a statement that said it would make an exception during this outbreak for student athletes. Elsewhere, Major League Baseball is grappling with a number of key issues related to its delayed season that could come to a head in the next few days. They've worked with the Players Association toward an agreement, acknowledging the inevitability of a shortened season that both parties hope will begin by early June. We will have our insider Jeff Passan later in this hour talking about it. And then the Panthers released Cam Newton yesterday, a move that became necessary after they officially completed the deal bringing in Teddy Bridgewater. They needed to clear $21.1 million that Newton was scheduled to count against the salary cap for this coming year. And I feel I need to remind everyone that Cam Newton is, as we speak, 16 months removed from playing about as well as he ever played in his career. Through the first half of the 2018 season, and you see the numbers here, he was actually putting up better numbers than he did during the year he won the MVP, which was 3 years before, and Carolina was 6-2. He got hit in the shoulder. He was never the same again. And so let's get the latest as we bring in our Adam Schefter. And Shefty, obviously the key with him first and foremost is going to be the health. Yeah. And under these extraordinary circumstances, how will teams assess his health given their inability to get their hands on him?
It's going to be very difficult, Greeny. And in fact, Cam Newton has already recognized this because he and the Carolina Panthers arranged for him to undergo a physical on Tuesday in Atlanta. And his agency and the Panthers said he did pass and he did check out. But that doesn't change the fact that other teams that potentially could be interested in Cam Newton are going to want to get their own hands on him. They're going to want to see him. There'll have to be some sort of independent doctor that they trust enough in a high-risk investment here to get this done. Now, again, Cam Newton's a former MVP. He's gifted. He's blessed. He's talented. He's somebody you would want quarterbacking your team. But teams that will consider signing him are also going to want a thorough physical before they sign him, and it's hard to imagine in this current environment how something like that is going to get done.
All right, so that's obviously an enormous complication. With that in the back of our minds, what would seem like some logical places to be considering for him?
Well, here's the problem for Cam Newton. He winds up getting released a week into free agency, 10 days after the negotiating window begins for players, and teams that had openings at the quarterback position have filled those slots. Tom Brady signed in Tampa. Phillip Rivers signed in Indianapolis. Teddy Bridgewater signed in Carolina. The Bears traded for Nick Foles. There aren't that many teams short of the Chargers and Patriots that have unresolved quarterback issues. The Chargers right now seem intent upon going with Tyrod Taylor and drafting a quarterback at some point in time to go along with the quarterback that they drafted last year, Easton Stick. Cam Newton, the Patriots, there hasn't been any chatter. It doesn't mean they can't make a move for him. It doesn't seem or feel like a Patriots sort of move, and that leaves Cam on the outside looking in. In my mind, what will happen here is there'll be a team that just likes him and believes in him as the player he is and is willing to take the chance on him, but it'd be impossible to project which team that would be because it could be somebody that doesn't have a real need at the quarterback position.
All right, Shefty, stay with me a minute here. I'm going to come back to you on a couple of other matters, but I've got Dan Orlovsky and Danien Woody with me this morning, and they are ready to go, and it's great to see you fellas. And let's talk about Cam Newton and a fit. Dan Orlovsky, I will start with you. You heard Shefty mention the Chargers, the Patriots, and then he really sort of threw the door open to anything that we may not necessarily be able to foresee. So to you, what is a sensible fit for Cam Newton?
The Los Angeles Chargers, and it's a no-brainer, Greeny. The reality is this: if Cam Newton goes to the Chargers, they vault into the top third of the teams in the AFC. You mentioned what he was midway through the 2018 season, right, and how well he was playing before that TJ Watt hit. We also need to look at the Chargers in the same way as well. I mean, this was a team in 2018 that a lot of people thought was going to go into New England and give them a run for their money in the playoffs. Now, they didn't play well and New England wins that game. That's a 12-win team from 2018. This was a 5-5 football team last year before the wheels fell off. This is a ready-to-win team. team right now with that top 5 defense, the weapons on the outside, the additions to the offensive line. And I understand that they say, like, we like Tyrod Taylor, but we have a pretty good idea of who and what Tyrod Taylor is at the quarterback position. What happens if Los Angeles gets to the 2018 version of Cam Newton? Then all of a sudden they become a problem in the AFC, and you can still draft your young quarterback at the 6th pick. This is too easy. Like, this makes too much sense to me. The Chargers, go get Cam Newton. All of a sudden you become a playoff contending football team, Greeny.
D-Wood, what makes sense to you?
I have to agree with Orlowski. I've always said the Chargers made too much sense for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're the Los Angeles Chargers. You're moving into a new stadium. Okay, you got to create some buzz, some juice. What better way to do that than bringing in a former MVP in Cam Newton? A guy, like we said, in 2018, basically the first half of 2018, he was having a better season than he had his 2015 season when he won the league MVP. This Chargers team had more weapons on offense than what Cam had in 2015 when he won the MVP. They have playmakers all across the board, wide receiver, tight end, running back. They have one of the best defenses in the National Football League. So for me, you're talking about the Chargers, you have an opportunity to get a guy who's only 31 years old, a former MVP, a guy who's still mobile. That's really one of the criticisms that you had of Phillip Rivers. Not only the turnovers, but he was immobile in the pocket. So now you can be more diverse as far as your offensive scheme is concerned because you have an athletic quarterback in Cam Newton. It just makes too much sense.
All right, so we all seem to like that fit. Let's talk about the other one Shefty mentioned. Dan Orlowski, are you intrigued by the notion of Bill Belichick and Josh Daniels creating an offense in New England around Cam Newton?
No, Greeny, I'm not. It's never fit what they've done. I mean, they've done relatively the same offense, or at least the foundation of it, for 20 years together, for the most part. And so I don't see them scrapping that to go, okay, you know what, just because we have the potential to get Cam, we're going to throw away everything that we know and that we've built, at least offensively, that has allowed us to have our success. Their offense is about ball out quickly, ball distribution, playing point guard, being accurate in the short passing game. And that's never been Cam. He's been a dominant runner, and he's been outstanding throwing the ball downfield. And so that team is, and also, Greeny, they can't afford Cam Newton. More than likely, they cannot afford Cam Newton. So I know there's intrigue there for New England. I just don't see it.
And D-Wood, one other thing I want to just get your take on, and we thank you for stepping away from the chariot racing you're hosting in your home there to do this conversation. Anyone who sees your backdrop knows what I'm talking about. There's a difference, it seems to me, between being healthy and being done. Cam Newton, at times, the doctors can tell you that his injuries have healed, but he's taken so many hits over the course of time. Would you be worried that every player has a certain number of hits sort of in his body, that he is rapidly approaching that number?
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, with all the way that the Carolina Panthers use Cam Newton, they basically brought his Auburn system with him into the National Football League, and it's worked for a long time. And you can see the toll that it took on Cam Newton's body. But I also saw the improvements that Cam Newton made as a passer, particularly with Norv Turner as the offensive coordinator. So there's a body of work there that you saw from Cam Newton as far as being a passer, that he could go into different systems and make it work.
All right, so that we'll have to see if that's the direction it winds up going. Guys, stay with me a second here. I have much more from you, but I want to bring Adam Schefter back into the conversation. And Shefty, let's run the hurry up through a couple of other situations out there in the NFL, and it starts with another quarterback. What is the latest on Jameis Winston?
Well, Green, we can bring up the quarterback-needy teams that we mentioned before with Cam Newton. The Chargers, the Patriots don't see a fit with either one. So once again, it comes down to what team that you're not expecting is going to step outside the box and bring in a guy like Jameis Winston, the former #1 overall pick. Right now, it's been quiet. We'll see how that all shakes out over time. Looking for work, it's not going to be a starting job that he gets.
And then there's Andy Dalton, now in Cincinnati, and where does he go next?
Again, we're looking for landing spots where they just don't exist at this point in time. So maybe there's a team out there that does decide to make a move for a guy like Andy Dalton, who the Colts had interest in, who the Bears had some interest in. Those teams went other directions, and so now it leaves you in a situation where you're waiting to see what pops up in fluid situations.
Yeah, and Cincinnati is expected to take a quarterback #1, and that brings us to the NFL draft. Right now, the NFL is sticking to current draft dates despite a recommended delay by a subcommittee of general managers. They're concerned, the GMs are, that there won't be enough time for player physicals, for gathering psychological testing, for getting further verified information about the players. and some teams having to conduct the draft from home. So there's a good deal of concern on the part of the GMs. But, Shefty, this was your story overnight with Diana Rossini, and she'll join us in our next hour. What more can you tell us about this decision to go forward with the draft?
It's interesting, Greeny, because right now the NFL seems intent upon having the draft in April, exactly on the dates it is scheduled to have them, just not in Las Vegas. The general managers are not happy because essentially, as of today, Roger Goodell has ordered that all team facilities shut down until at least April 8th. So where are they going to be conducting the draft? Some teams, like the teams in California, like the teams in New Jersey, Philadelphia, maybe they're not even allowed inside their building by the time the draft rolls around, whereas other teams might be allowed. So that would be an advantage for those teams. I had one team suggest to me yesterday that we could wind up renting a hotel room, a conference room in a hotel, so that we could have our war room there because we're not allowed in our facilities. There's lots of unknowns here about how this is going to work. The one thing we can say is the GMs don't want to have the draft when it is. They want it pushed back. The NFL wants the draft on the dates it has it and hasn't discussed moving it back at this point in time. And I would throw one other curveball in there. I'll give you my idea, Greeny.
Yeah.
Basically, how about having one round of the draft on every night? So we have 7 nights, 7 rounds. Basically, it's the Hanukkah of NFL drafts. That's what you're talking about in time. And there's no rush to get through anything. It gives teams on the clock more time. It's not like coaches have to have players in mini camps. Next week, they don't. There are no mini camps. There's no off-season program. There's no other sporting events on the calendar. Have the draft occur 1 round per night for 1 straight week, and every round would be a big deal that week.
Okay, listen, I'm all in. I will do everything I can to try and further that. We'll call it the Shefty plan. I do want to quickly go back to something you touched on there for a moment. Roger Goodell sending a memo yesterday that all teams have to shut down their facilities starting today. What more do we have on that?
That's the situation where, number one, the NFL wants to be safe. Health and safety is paramount here. And so it's also a situation where you have certain teams in California and New Jersey where they're working out of their homes. They're doing draft meetings via teleconference calls. And you have other teams that are in their buildings going through meetings with their board. And I think the teams that don't have that feel like it's a competitive disadvantage. And so I think first and foremost, for safety reasons, Roger Goodell is saying all facilities must be shut down at 6 p.m. local time today in every NFL city. But beyond that, there's a competitive element that some teams are disgruntled about at this point in time.
All right, Shefty, so well done. Thank you, my friend, and I will see you a little bit later this morning. Meanwhile, we're just getting started on Get Up today. We have a lot to talk about. Tom Brady said all the right things when he was introduced as a Buccaneer yesterday. We'll tell you why his new teammates should have been paying close attention to something he said. And then, no matter where Tua is drafted, there's a good chance we won't see him on the field next year. We'll tell you why that is a good thing.